Welcome to Talkin Divorce. Real conversation, real guidance. With Donald Schweitzer and Laurie McShane.
Welcome back to Talkin Divorce. In part one of our series, Home is Where the Heart Is, we talked about the emotional connection people have to the marital home and the difficult decisions that can come with that divorce. And today, we're continuing the conversations by focusing on what comes next, understanding your options and protecting yourself financially and legally, and finding a way to move forward with clarity and support.
Laurie's client decides that she's not going to want to sell the home. She wants to keep the home, and she's going to have to refinance to get her husband off the loan, right? So what happens then is that you learn from the husband that he intends on meeting with Janice afterwards to get a reverse mortgage on the new loan. Would that be something, if you knew that was about to happen, it would play into your consideration as to whether this person should get the loan?
So is the reverse mortgage going on the existing property like a new purchase?
No, it's a new property, but he'd refinance it to get her off the loan, because you just told me that you can't really assume it. Then his plan is that, okay, now with this new loan, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Janice across the street and say, hey, I want to get a reverse mortgage on this new loan that I got.
Yeah.
Would there be any problems with that?
No. I mean,
okay.
He's going to, if he's buying a new property with a reverse mortgage, he's going to need a sizable down payment, right? So regardless of, if the decree is outlining that he gets X amount of dollars, in equity from this property, and his ex wants to keep it, and she's able to do that, and he gets his money, and he can do with it what he wants, right? And he can come to you and do a reverse purchase, right?
Yes, yeah. I've done that for a variety of clients who've departed their home, received a lump sum equalization payment. They can use that payment to make a down payment on another property. Again, we're going to be able to lend them approximately 50% of the appraised value of the home. So if they're purchasing a $1 million home, they're going to probably need to bring approximately $500,000 to the transaction, and we'll be able to lend them another $500,000 in the form of a reverse mortgage, upon which they would never have any mortgage payments to make.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I love these options.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about some good options here, Laurie, but now let's talk about the hard part of this. Are there things that would make you say, this doesn't make sense, Janice?
Well, yes. If I pull the credit on the borrower and there have been a lot of late payments on property taxes, homeowners insurance, and there's no extenuating circumstance. Now, by the way, legal separation, divorce, those are extenuating circumstances. And if we can demonstrate that they led to an inability to make a timely payment, we might be able to get around that. But under normal circumstances, if there is problem credit, if there is insufficient income to cover taxes, homeowners insurance, and HOA, there may be what we call a residual income shortfall, and we wouldn't be able to complete the loan. And the best example I can give you of that is I recently did a reverse mortgage for a couple in La Cañada, Flint Ridge. They're a married couple. Their homeowners insurance they're up against a mountain. It's a beautiful property, but you can probably imagine they're in a brush area. Their homeowners insurance is astronomical. The home appraised for about $6 million. Their payment is very, very high. Their taxes are very high. And so we always have to take a good hard look. We want a borrower to be successful. That's what we all want. We want a transaction to be a successful transaction, not just today, not just for next week, but into the future. We don't want anyone biting their nails. What am I going to do now? I can't pay my insurance.
It's the last thing you would want.
The last thing. So we want to be able to guide them and say, yes, this is not going to work for you because your Social Security alone or what have you, is not going to be sufficient to meet your monthly nut.
Well, I guess I could turn back to you, Jason. What do you think? Somebody going through a divorce, I've been given the green light, I've got 90 days to refinance this home. Are there situations where you've got to look at it and say, it's probably not going to work out? What would those circumstances look like?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's twofold. One, if they just don't qualify, it's not going to work out, right? If I'm not able to get the loan done for them, their debt to income ratio is maybe too high, credit is too low, or whatever's going on, right? It's just not feasible, right? And ideally, you find that out before you start negotiating with who's keeping the property. It just doesn't always happen that way. But yeah, I mean, if it's something where, so I try to take on not just, hey, you're qualified, but also a little bit of an advising role as well, based on lifestyle, ask those types of questions. We go over all the numbers. Hey, this is what the mortgage payment is going to be. This is what your income is. If you're like right at the limit of your debt to income ratio, so you can technically on paper qualify for this loan, but you're gonna be so stressed out that you can't sleep at night, or one month, one bad month, let's say, for whatever reason, of any unforeseen expenses is putting you in the hole and you're not able to make the payment. That's where you have a conversation about that. Hey, yes, I can get this loan done for you, but let's talk about it. How do you really feel about this payment moving forward?
It's good that you're doing that. You're not just processing the loan.
Not just processing the loan, but looking at the whole picture and really, beyond, and just talking it through with the client. Just having somebody else on their team that is working for them, not for themselves, right? Ultimately, and just looking at the big picture and not just looking at it as a transaction.
So we've all purchased homes here. We're all big people, right? We're all adults. Do you remember the first home you bought and how scary it was when you were applying for that?
Oh, yeah.
I envision that's what it's like going through a divorce, and you haven't been in the process for a long time, as you indicated. That the income is half, maybe even less than half of what it used to be.
Right.
That must be pretty scary for them to come in and have that financial discussion with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's already a lot of emotions that you're feeling around the whole situation in general. And the last thing you probably want to talk about, even though it's necessary, are finances and what that looks like moving forward.
Very personal in nature, kind of embarrassing maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
So when you make this decision as to whether or not you could help this person, do you have like a method of talking to them? It seems to me like you're like the Godfather almost, or something. You're going for help, and you have so much power in your hands and everything. You have to have a good bedside manners, I would think. I know that when my first house, there's some gruff guy, and he's like, you're going to have to sell this. Yep, you're going to have to. Well, you got to pay that loan off, and there was like no feelings at all. I mean, do the two of you have a different type of methodology when you're talking to people about this highly personal aspect of their lives?
Yeah, I'll start real quick. You're going to find, it's like any other industry, but when it comes to, speaking with a loan officer, you're going to run into the entire spectrum of personalities and how they operate their business. And some are very blunt, straight to the point, transactional, and they will, whatever the news is, whether it's positive or negative, they just give it to you straight, and they don't care how you're going to feel about it, right? And then they're on to the next one. That was
the one I was talking about.
Yeah.
There's definitely that type, which is that really serving a client in this very sensitive situation that they're in? No, it's not. I definitely try to operate my business not from a transactional state, but like really, connecting with the client, talking with them about their goals, whether it's a regular purchase or if it's, a divorce buyout or whatever it is, and just really being sensitive to what they're experiencing and going through, right? And I found that if you're able to connect with someone and put them, at a little bit more ease than they were before the phone call, that's really helpful for the client. Because when I bought my first home, when my wife and I bought our first home, I was doing this job. I was a mortgage advisor, and it was still stressful buying a home, even though I know exactly what I'm doing with the loan and what's going on. Just going through the process and making that decision of, yeah, we're moving forward with this property and all that, like, it's stressful. It's a lot.
Well, yeah. Then you have
Yeah.
all the paperwork that accompanies it. You know, California is constantly changing all of the arrangements on the RPA forms and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So
Yeah, and honestly, even the smoothest of escrows can be stressful, right? So we try not to add to that stress, right? Because it's not the fact that a hiccup or a problem or whatever happens during the process, but it's how you respond to it. And if we're able to minimize that stress for the client, it's really beneficial for them.
You said at the very beginning of the show that you suggest people get in early to start figuring things out.
Yeah.
I hear I've never done it, but pre-qualify. You go
Yeah.
in there and try to pre-qualify. What does that really mean? It doesn't really mean that you got the loan, right? It just means that you're kind of giving some tentative thoughts. Is that what it is?
So pre-qualifying, that can be a verbal conversation over the phone. We'll
Okay.
call it like a verbal pre-qualification. So I may ask you about your job history, your income, your assets. How does your credit look? We haven't ran it yet. Any idea? What are your other monthly liabilities that are recurring every month? And I can determine based on what you're telling me, hey, yeah, that's probably going to work, or no, that's probably not going to work. But that's just a verbal conversation. So they call it like a verbal pre-qualification. A pre-approval is when you're actually filling out an application, you're submitting your income and asset documentation, we're running credit, and then from there, based on the information provided, yeah, I can pre-approve you for this loan amount or this purchase price or whatever it is. It's still going to be conditioned upon meeting underwriting requirements, but you're most of the way there at that point. If you're working with a loan officer who knows what they're doing, essentially, right? You're most of the way there, and you can feel pretty confident that this is going to work. In divorce situations, you can even go above and beyond that if you get started right away at the very beginning, and we can even do a pre-underwrite with the underwriter as well, and just get the loan to conditional approval, and then you can see what the remaining conditions are, and if they can be satisfied, you know that you have a loan here. And
what about like encumbrances on a loan when you're dealing with, you're trying to help somebody get another pre-approval for another house that they need to purchase, but then there's all these encumbrances on the original.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, do you mean like if they still have that liability in their name, for example?
Yeah,
like if they're looking to buy something prior to.
It adds to how much they're going to have to refinance, right? Because they have to pay that off.
Well, if they're looking to purchase something, if they have the ability to purchase something prior to the divorce being settled or them being removed from that other mortgage, then yeah, it does add another layer, and that would be an example of, hey, what other monthly recurring liabilities do you have that we need to factor in? So if it's somebody that income's not a problem, they're earning a lot of money and they want to get on with their life before everything else is settled, they absolutely can do that still. We would just be treating that as a second property essentially that's under their real estate owned at the moment, and whatever the monthly expenses are for that, be it the loan, the taxes, the insurance, any HOA, we'll factor that into their liabilities.
Okay, I got another hypothetical for you. Janice's client, 81 years old, served in the military back in the 1940s, 50s, and whatever it would be. He's got a VA loan. Okay, can he still? Would that be something they could still use at that sweet age to refinance the property in a divorce case?
Oh yeah.
What happens if he's used the loan previously to buy the home?
He can still use it.
He can still use it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, if the loan is staying put though, and he's wanting to use his entitlement to purchase a new property, well, now he's losing the ability to put zero down potentially, depending on where the properties are located and how much entitlement's been used. He may have to bridge the gap with some sort of a down payment. It might not be the full 25%. That's eliminated because VA guarantees 25%, but it may be a portion of it. But you can technically have two VA loans in that instance. It's just the second one you're more than likely not going to be able to utilize the zero down benefit.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
A lot of people out there, especially in the group of people that we're talking about who are getting reverse mortgages, the baby boomers, us, right? A lot of people that fall in that category. So, Janice, before we started the show today, you and I had a conversation. We're not going to mention any names of any of the people that you're working on that are going through a divorce, but you talked about receiving a phone call from a judge in Chambers.
Yes.
Get me Janice. I need to talk to her to figure out what this is going on. So what was that conversation all about?
I was in shock. My client called me and said, Janice, are you at your desk? And I said, yes. He said, I'm in the judge's chambers and the judge would like to speak with you.
How'd you feel at that point?
A little nervous. Yeah, definitely a situation. But fortunately, this judge, who is someone you know, could not have been lovelier, more patient, while I actually had to, log in. It took a couple of minutes. These things are not like, right at the tip of my nose all the time. So it took a few minutes and I was feeling a little under pressure, but I was able to get the answers. He wanted to know what happens if the home appraises for this? What about if it appraises for that? And what if it appraises? So we went through 3 different scenarios just to kind of get a sense, because like you, we never know. We can pre-underwrite all we want. When that appraisal comes in, that's really going to be a determining factor in terms of, is this going to work or not? So he was very wise in that he wanted to know, okay, what would be the lowest appraised value that would still be a successful transaction? And so we were able to, have that discussion. And he asked some excellent questions. So it was...
He's a smart guy.
He's a smart guy. And I was I was so happy to be able to be part of the process on that level, to be able to reassure not only the judge, but the lawyers involved and the departing spouse, who is his wife, that things were going to be overwhelmingly likely just fine.
Okay, we can talk about this sanity of getting a divorce at the age of 81, but that's for another show.
Yes.
So you're talking about getting this call, and the 3 of you should know this, that because you were talking about divorce, if you ever get involved in these cases, you could be called into courts, right, for various reasons. So I want to one at a time ask you, would you be willing to do that? So, in your situation, Lori, there could be a fight over the value of the property. Now, as a real estate agent, you have some influence as to what that listing price is going to be. And obviously you talked about your fiduciary duty. How would you feel if suddenly you were called to appear remotely from your desk to talk to the judge, on the record about, what the listing price should be and, what you're doing in order to get the house going and stuff? Would you be willing to do that?
Yes, absolutely. I would be very confident in doing that because I really know the numbers and I see all what's going on in today's market. And then I also, I'm also connected with top appraisers in the company as well. So I can easily, defer that just to have a professional opinion besides my own. But yeah, that's my duty. I need to document everything and show the numbers and how this would be. It's very with the comparative market analysis. You can easily find it. It's also based on, the condition of the property as well. That has a lot to play into it. A lot of times people want an aspirational price for their property, but it's just not there because of the condition of the property. And so somebody has to go in and, explain that process and why this number is this figure.
Yeah. So, a lot of professionals, whether they're appraisers or people that do work on homes and things like that, doctors, they don't want anything to do with the courtroom. So we actually have a hard time trying to find people to help us when it pertains to the house, and stuff. So again, now I know that you'll pick up the phone if the judge calls you.
Oh yeah.
But what happens if an attorney goes, "Hey, Janice, I'm going to be in court, next Tuesday, and I could really use your testimony, in the afternoon. You got time for that?"
I've done it twice.
Okay.
Downtown, the courthouse. I went before Judge Klein, who I believe is
We're supposed to mention any name. No, that's okay. I'm teasing.
he's retired.
Okay,
So
good. Okay.
In probate court.
Okay. I was going to say, you do probate and other types of
Yes.
law as well. Okay.
So we had a battling family regarding the welfare of this very elderly, blind gentleman who knew his way around his house, had not left that house in a long time. The siblings did not want to do, one of the siblings wanted to do the reverse mortgage to enable dad to remain in the home. The other siblings wanted to sell the house and not allow dad to do the reverse. And it actually went to court. And so I testified, and it was a very interesting process. And there was another time that I went another probate case and testified regarding a reverse mortgage situation.
Were you remote, or did you go into the court?
I went in person.
So that must have taken big chunk out of your day.
You know, it did, but I thought of it each time as an adventure.
Okay.
So, and I knew that it would be something that I would learn from, because I don't do it every day. And I was excited to do it. And I even, I went early, and I parked my car, and I walked around the courthouse a little bit. I don't spend a whole lot of time. You spend a lot of time in courthouses, but it's kind of a cool thing for me. So I just thought of it as an adventure.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it.
I'm wondering if Jason would share your excitement about it. What do you think?
I mean, I would go, honestly.
I would think that you would have some reservations about how much you want to commit. Let's say, because in your context, a judge might ask you, well, do you think that he or she could qualify for the loan? And, you're making some statements in court on the record. You have to be pretty careful with your words, I would think.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have I have an obligation to my client, right, in regarding their financial privacy, right? So I'd want to verify, hey, what can and can't I say here?
Maybe get a waiver or something
like that. Yeah, and maybe get something from my client that I can speak, regarding the details of their potential loan and whatnot. But no, I mean, I would welcome that. I mean, like Shannon said, I would probably kind of view that as something, that's definitely out of the ordinary for me to do, but it would be kind of exciting, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. As long as I don't get myself into trouble.
So at a near future show, we're going to have an expert on bankruptcy in here.
Oh.
Okay, and that's going to be interesting because, like in your professions, bankruptcy plays into divorces sometimes.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, like, if you find that somebody's been through a bankruptcy, does that impact your decisions that you've got to make in your profession?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's guidelines depending on the loan program of how long the bankruptcy it needs to be, how long it needs to be seasons, or how long it was discharged ago. And if there's extenuating circumstances, that timeline gets reduced, but not always completely eliminated, but sometimes. So it just depends on the whole picture, but we absolutely factor that in regarding whether or not you can qualify.
And I just completed, I'm patting myself on the back. This was one of the toughest loans I've ever done. It was for an attorney. He had filed for bankruptcy, and the process took a really long time, but we got it done. We needed 12 months of on-time bankruptcy payments, and we were able to get it done. We needed an order from a judge, signed order, giving permission for my borrower to do the reverse mortgage. So we got what we needed. He had a good attorney, and I slept like a baby that night because I felt so good knowing that I'd made it possible for him to remain in his home.
Huge difference in his life. Yeah.
Oh,
Both of you seem to really care for your clients and pulling for them. So that's a different perception than I ever had of a mortgage broker. I was, like I said, is that person that's like, yeah, okay, you better sell this, get out of my office. You guys are actually pulling for the people and stuff, and really trying to make it work, it sounds.
Absolutely. And, it's funny when you ask Jason about, the time and the conversations that he has with his borrowers. I call myself kind of jokingly a reverse mortgage therapist because I spend a lot of time listening. Like you, Lori, we want to know what are the most important components of this transaction in these people's lives? What is the objective? We want to keep them safe and in a sustainable situation. And so I learn what I need to know through conversations with them. And so, yeah, it's very interesting. There's a lot of discussion that takes place.
I think they give a lot of bonding too. I mean, when you do well for somebody, they don't forget you, do they? You know, and so you're talking about these folks that, you know, you get a reverse mortgage, you've just basically made their life work for them again.
Oh, yeah.
So there must be some real, you know, friendship there.
Yes.
And, you know, especially if you're getting somebody either the first or second or third home, they're probably repeat customers for you, I would think, you know, if you handle it the right way.
That's the idea, yeah. You always run into the client. There's always going to be clients out there that are hyper focused on rate or, you know, one aspect of it, and they themselves are very transactional. Hey, whoever can get this deal done for me, and then I'm on to the next one, right?
Okay.
So there are those clients too, but for the most part, yes. I think you know, people in general really appreciate you taking the time to get to know them and building a relationship with them beyond just the transaction, and it creates a higher level of trust as well. I've found, you know, with the client, they know that, hey, don't feel like you're bugging me at all during this process. You can call me, you can email me, you can text me. I'm going to respond to you. I'm not going to get annoyed with you. I understand the stress, you know, that you're feeling throughout this process, and I'm going to do everything I can to make it as smooth as possible for you. That's kind of the approach I like to take, and yeah, for the most part, it does create a lot of repeat business for me. Maybe you don't win every deal up front because of that sometimes, but you know, in the long run, it does absolutely, you know, for the long term for your business, it creates a very sustainable and honestly a more enjoyable business in general.
Yeah. I know from speaking for my wife and I, when our home was at a certain rate that we were able to refinance the loan, it seemed like the broker that we used was a godsend. You know, it was like, oh my gosh, you're going to do that for us and everything. So in a lot of ways, they're very thankful when you get the job done, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So Lori, you know, we're all in the profession of dealing with people with high emotions, right? As a divorce attorney, I thought I was the only one. And then I was involved in like the Chamber of Commerce, you know, and other networking groups. And I find that just about everybody who has to deal with people are pseudo psychiatrists, right? And we all share that same thing where, you know, we have to be very patient and talk and stuff. And, you know, yours has got to be the hardest, you know, because what you have is just naturally buying a home. This is one of the most stressful things that a human being could go through. It's even harder than a death, some people say.
Yes.
But now you put a divorce on top of that, and people that are fighting, you know, and situations I've had where one spouse wants to use the house as a pawn, just like they do when they're dealing with child custody. You know, it's like that kid is no longer a kid, the kid is a pawn. Well, the house becomes that sometimes. You know, I'm not going to agree with anything you say, even though the broker says that we should be doing it. You know, that's going to be pretty tough for you.
Yeah, it's super tough, and especially because the home could, you know, sometimes harder than the divorce. You know, they don't want to break up with that house because, you know, there's so much emotion there. Their kids are there. There's memories there. So it's just a matter of, for me, it's just to stay on point in the finish line and just to keep everybody motivated, and also having a team of people like professionals like this together and working together, because when you have somebody going through all of this, it really, like, I'm not here to handle, you know, I'm not here to give advice or anything like that. I can only speak to what I know, which is the real estate side of things. And a lot of times it wants to blend the two together. So I have to, you know, acknowledge and you know, acknowledge what's going on, but then also advise them to, you know, you need to speak to your attorney if you want to, you know, move that decision forward, or you need to, you know, go that route. So I think communication, going back to the beginning, communication is key, but not only just with the party involved in the home sale, but the lawyers and even the mortgage advisors and stuff like that as well.
Right.
Because that's going to determine your outcome of what's going to happen in the next chapter of your life.
Okay.
So.
Well, it looks like we're out of time. There's so many more that I want to ask you, and we're going to hopefully get you back on our show. maybe our podcast in in my office or back over here. But there's a lot more questions. I hope that our viewers have learned a lot. I certainly have, just sitting here chatting for the hour that we've been involved in.
Yeah, and I love all the options that there are available, because I feel it's either black or white, but now you can work in this gray matter,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah, there's been a lot of
Yeah.
clarity. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having
Thank
me.
you. Thanks for
Yeah,
having
thank
us.
you.
Just remember, home isn't just a place. It's something you can rebuild. Thank you for joining us on Talkin Divorce. For more episodes, visit us on our YouTube channel at Talkin Divorce. And if you have questions surrounding divorce or family law that you'd like Dawn to answer on future shows, you can also submit them on our website at talkindivorce.com. And we'll see you next time. Bye.